Did you know that testing can be so much easier with all of the cool tools available in Visual Studio? Come learn more about testing tools in Visual Studio with Wendy on this episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and today I'm excited because we're going to be talking about testing tools in Visual Studio and how you can get the best testing experience possible in the VS IDE. So joining us today is Wendy, who's going to be talking more about that. Hey, Wendy.
Hello. I'm going to introduce myself first, and then I'll get into talking a little bit about the testing tools that we have. My name is Wendy Briding, and I am a product manager lead on the Visual Studio .NET tooling team, responsible for testing tools, productivity, and languages for .NET. And I am super excited to be here. Testing is a hugely important part of the development lifecycle, helping you find your bugs earlier instead of waiting until you get to the end of the CI pipeline. And so we're working on making sure that you have all of the easiest ways of testing your code before you push it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I know as somebody who's worked on like the debugging tools before, sometimes it can feel like an afterthought for many folks to consider how to take advantage of all the tools and stuff that are being offered to you through Visual Studio. So I'm excited to talk more about the testing tools in that sense.
Yes, and there's a lot of cool things that we've added over the last year or so that have not only sped up the processing and running and discovery of tests, but also making your life easier, making it easier to jump from your code to your tests. And I'm excited to show off some of the stuff. You want me to jump in and start showing?
Yeah, let's go on in.
Awesome. So the first thing that I really love is jumping back and forth between Test Explorer and my code can be really a pain in finding, especially in repos where you've got hundreds of tests. Finding the test that you're trying to work on can be difficult. And so we've added this show in Test Explorer, which is pretty cool. You just click inside the method that you're working on, and it jumps right to that specific test in Test Explorer, which instead of having to hunt through and find is just a lifesaver.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, I can't imagine that feature not being there.
And then notice there is a handy dandy little keyboard shortcut for those who are keyboard folks as well, to make that easy. You don't have to use the context menu, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Another thing that I really, really love that we've added in the last year is the ability to trigger audio cues when your tests have completed, especially when you're running hundreds of tests. It's really awesome. So you can have this play sound when tests finish running. Now you have to set it up first and pick which sounds, and you can pick any sounds that you want. If I can come in here and configure sounds, you have the ability to, down in the Visual Studio, here, you can set one sound for when the test run succeeds and one sound for when the test runs failed. And so you can let your tests run in the background while you're working on something else, and it'll alert you when your tests have completed, so you can go and check out the results. And you have different sounds to let you know if it's failed or succeeded, so you can, the yay in the background, or, dang it, now what happened? And you go and start debugging.
You can have custom sounds, right? Like
any custom, yes. Awesome. I used some standard ones for mine, but yeah, I've heard some people have like the sound.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I probably pick for my failed sound, that sound from like Price is Right, where it's like
Yes, exactly. I was looking for that the other day so I could have it for this, but they wanted me to pay money or sign up for accounts. So
no.
Like, nope, not worth it today. So
to GarageBand to go then. Awesome.
There are so many ways to run tests. Like you can run tests from pretty much anywhere within Visual Studio. If you wanted to run tests from the Solution Explorer, you can click on a particular file or the entire solution and click Run Tests. When I click on the file, it's going to run just the tests that are in that file. And there's my everything succeeded noise. If you wanted to just run a single test, you have that option from within the context menu. You can run tests here as well. When you're in the Test Explorer window, you have the ability to click on a file, the entire solution, and run so many different ways. There's also the test menu up here where you can run the all tests or the last run test. There's like so many ways to run tests, which makes it, whatever you're comfortable with, plus the handy shortcut keys, which whatever your pleasure, you can run those tests.
Yeah, and I think it's more discoverable that way too. Like I personally wasn't all that familiar with the Test Explorer window when I first started using VS. So knowing that there's all those options to run your test and then you're directed to that endpoint, regardless of where you go, is really helpful.
Yes. And then it shows you the results of your last test run right here in the code lens, which is amazing. So you can see right here, there's a little check mark that it passed. I can see the details. So if I don't have my Test Explorer window open, I can see the results of my last test, which is all awesome. And then I can, of course, then debug or jump into Test Explorer if I need to, all right there from right inside the code, which is incredible.
Yeah, so you don't have to constantly swap between windows and stuff if you don't want to.
Yeah. The next really cool thing that we've added is this ability to show your console.writeLine right in your Test Explorer summary. So if I come back down here, let me just use the cool show in Test Explorer so I can jump right to it. We see all the standard output is displayed in your test summary, which makes it really easy for you to understand, especially, and you can see here I'm using random, and so I don't know what numbers it's throwing at me. And so I can see what tests are running. Now you can see that a lot of these are really long, and we've added this wrap text in the summary pane, so I can see everything right there. Everything's wrapped nice and neat, so I can see the full result of it, which is awesome.
Perfect.
Now, if you're doing a lot of stuff and you've done a bunch of runs, some have failed, some have passed, and you want to start fresh, you can come in and we have the ability to delete a particular test run, clear the test results. And so you have the ability to use this clear test results or use the delete key, and that will clear the results for that particular test. Also have the ability to do it for all of them. And so the handy, it's shift delete to clear all the tests, and that sets everything to not run. And so none of the test results then are there for you anymore.
That is great. Yeah. And also on a related note, in regards to all these testing tools, are they all applicable across multiple languages, or is this just like a .NET thing?
Yeah, so these we strive to make it work across as many languages as possible. These are tested in specifically C#, .NET languages, and C++. We work hard to make sure that those work the best. Others, they do work as best we can.
Cool. And I guess that's what the importance of sharing feedback on the experiences for you.
Yes, exactly. The next thing I want to show is a really cool feature that we just added. Sometimes you have a flaky test, it fails sometimes, but not all the time, and you're really not sure why. We added a run test until failure. And so this is going to run, it's going to keep running until failure or it reaches a threshold. Inside the options, we have the ability for you to set the threshold. By default, it's at 1,000, so it'll run 1,000 times for the demo's purposes. I've set it down to a low 50 so that it's not going to sit and run, and I can show some other cool stuff. But when I run until failure, this will start up. do the build, and then in the background, once that build finishes, it will start running the tests until it reaches a failure.
Awesome.
And so I can see here, it's waiting for the build to complete, and it's going to show the status here, as well as now that the build is succeeded, it should start running. And so here it's showing 2 of 50, 3 of 50, and it'll keep going. And all the results will start appearing. See 3 passed, and it is keeping track of how long each one has taken. And so if the failure occurs, it'll stop right then and there. Otherwise, it'll keep going until it reaches that threshold.
Cool. So this is all asynchronous, right? So you can work on other things while these tests are
So I
running?
can come over here and jump and start working on some more code while it's running in the background. I can see right there the status that keeps going, and the status bar down here showing me how long it's. And yeah, I can do as much as I want.
Cool. So you can be productive, or you can go take a coffee break and use audio cues to let you know when it's time for you to get back to your desk.
Exactly. And if it's run and you had it set for some really high number and it's run 900 times and it still hasn't failed, we do have the option here for you to cancel. And so then I can just, since we're at 31, I can go ahead and cancel, and you can see in this window that 38 passed. Yes. Yeah, I couldn't write a flaky test. I wasn't in that headspace. So I can view all the results there, and I
have the same problem when making debugger demos. It's like, okay, I need to deliberately create a bug. I can't do it if it's deliberate. It's happened accidentally.
Yes. Now, sometimes with your code, it runs a little bit differently for various frameworks. And so we have we've added some multi-target test project support. So I'm going to go in here and add Net7 to this test project. And so then we can, I put the target frame in the in my test explorer here so that we can see when it is going to discover and run the tests for the various frameworks in parallel, and run them and show the results. So some may fail and some may succeed. And you can then see the results for it run in Net6, Net7. This works for 4, 7, the earlier frameworks.
That's actually kind of nice. Yeah, because sometimes when
if you're trying to support other things, and of course longest today.
I like that. Just so you know, not everything's going to be completely broken when you.
This comes really in handy when you're. This comes real handy when you're testing projects that have to support both .NET Core and .NET Framework, which is really exciting. So here I can see I have my .NET 6 tests and all my .NET 7 tests, all which ones took longer to run, and I can go through and see the various results. I have all kinds of options in here. I can filter down to see just the .NET 6 or .NET 7 ones. I have the ability to group by, if I wanted to group by various things right now. I can group by the framework, and let's remove the other things. And so then it changes. So then I no longer have the project class structure, but just all my .NET 7 tests in alphabetical order, and then all my .NET 6 tests in alphabetical order. And I can sort if I wanted to change to put the 6 in a different order if I wanted.
Pretty sweet. That's nice to be able to have that kind of organization among all your different tests, regardless of what framework version you're using and things like that.
Yes. The next thing Code coverage is hugely important with tests, making sure that you are testing every line of code that you have. And we've made some huge improvements, especially in performance, but also in the report that we generate with code coverage. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to analyze my code coverage for all my tests. And of course, that's going to do another build. Hopefully this one doesn't take as long. And when that's done, it's going to bring up my code coverage report. Which is it's going to show me what lines are not covered by tests and which ones are covered by tests, so that I can see where I still have where I need to write tests for.
Cool. So it basically fills in the blanks kind of for you in terms of.
And we're waiting on the build. Oh. Yeah, so here's my report. And if I look at my math project here, I can see that, and I can click on my simple math. And it shows me which lines, and it has this cool highlight feature. So I've set my colors up so that the blue are the ones that are covered and the pink stand out. Let me know that, hey, you haven't written tests for this.
That is so nice. Yeah, I feel like it could be so easy to get up and writing a ton of code and then just missing a spot when it comes to a place that needs a test.
Yes. But we've made it even cooler, because sometimes you're working in really big repos and you've only made a small change. You've added one method or two methods. You've made changes to a method or two. And seeing this whole report, which, to be honest, most repos a very low code coverage, right? And you want to just know what impact you had. And so we've made some adjustments to the report. First thing is, this one is built, this is the project view. I can show it from a source view perspective. And so when I update that, change by my source code. So I can look there and see which to work on and look at. But the really coolness comes in here is this full report versus the change set report, where I can look at just the branch that I'm currently, my dev branch that I'm currently working on, and it's gonna then filter down the results that, oh, since your last commit on your branch, you're good. You have you haven't added anything. I haven't added anything that affects coverage. It moves all those other ones over to the partially covered areas. So you know that they're still there. They're still a problem, but they're not a problem that you introduced with this current change, which is awesome.
Yeah. And this is really great because, you know, I think some of us tend to skip coding, skip testing. You know? So it's nice to have this sort of forcing function that's helping you out a bit with, what do I test? It's like, okay, here you go. So that's nice.
Yes. And some companies have rules that, you know, all code must be at least 80% covered with unit tests. And so we've added in this cool filter feature where you can do, you can filter down the report to show only the files that have less than 80% code coverage. And so that reduces down my report just to those that need attention in order for me to meet my company's rules on code coverage, which is a huge lifesaver and time saver.
That's pretty cool. I wonder if that could be like extended to if you try to push your code or merge your branch, and then it could like check in like GitHub Actions or something for
yes.
Your testing percentage.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of CI pipelines do have that. The code coverage reports integrated in there and can provide that functionality.
Cool.
The next thing I wanted to show was, you know, diagnosing. All of my tests have been successful and everything has been running great. But what if it's not, right? Sometimes that you know, you need to figure out what's going on with your code. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make a mistake in my test here, and come down to show it in Test Explorer, and I'm gonna debug this test. And so from here, it's gonna do another build, and it's gonna run that test. And where the error happens, it's gonna open the debugger up, and show me all of the information from the debugger mixed in with my test information, which is hugely helpful when you're trying to figure out what's going on. And so here it's opening up the debugger. I can see where the error happened. Obviously, this assert, you know, I'm supposed to be adding, but I put that my result subtracting. Obviously, I didn't know that when I was doing this, right? So I can see here, wait a minute, something's not right. Okay. Why am I expecting 10 when I am, why am I expecting -10 when it should be -9? Because I'm adding 1 to a negative number. Something's not right there. There's my problem, and then I can fix it. So this is really helpful, launching into the debugger and showing you all the details about what's going on with your tests. And then I can cancel out of there, and I can fix my problem, which is awesome. But sometimes that isn't enough. Sometimes you need a little bit more. We do have some really cool command line additions that really help things out when you're trying to debug your tests a little bit more. And in the test platform, we have the ability to, and a feature we call blame, that helps you diagnose problems when your tests don't finish. So these are usually when you are looking at specifically crashes or hangs. They're really helpful in diagnosing. I don't have my code, none of them are crashing or hanging, but I just wanted to show some of the really cool options we have here. First, there's .NET test dash blame. And just blame is really good at what it does is it executable can handle the Stack Overflow exception and write it to the screen. And so here it's going to run the tests, and it's going to generate an XML file, and it's going to tell you when a test starts and when it finished, and it's going to check for all the unfinished tests and print out the message at the end so that you can see which tests didn't finish. And so that, can be really helpful when you're dealing with crashes. Wow, it's going to also print out, any faileds and all of the details around the failed tests, so you can see all of the information that you need, as well as the stack traces that you run into from your failures, which is really helpful in diagnosing and debugging.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To take it one step further, we have the --blame -crash. And this one will set up an exception monitor that will create a memory dump of the process for you to analyze. And so since the builds are taking so long for this, I'm not going to go run that one, but that's really helpful add-on to the -blame to give you those crash dumps when your code is experiencing crashes.
Yeah, super convenient, because then you don't have to rerun the whole thing again after the crash has already happened and you're struggling to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
Yes. And then say your code is not crashing, but it is hanging. And so when things are taking longer, they're hanging, you can do the -blame -hang -timeout, and then you can set whatever timeout you want. And so if something is taking longer than 10 minutes to run, or here in my example here, I have 1 minute to run, it's going to do the same thing that it did with the -blame, but it's going to look at all of the processes and create the memory dumps for all of those that have taken longer than the time that you've set.
That is really convenient.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because I mean, I know there's like the performance profiler is a tool that exists in Visual Studio as well. It can do some of that, but I don't know if it automatically creates the dumps on your behalf based off of like the hang time or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that's really neat.
Yeah. One last diagnosing thing that we have inside Visual Studio, we do have logging levels. By default, it's set to error. You can set it to trace, which is going to include all of the test platform logs. And so it's the same thing as running .NET Test -diag, which is the diagnosing part of .NET Test, the test platform. And this will, for all your test runs, it will print those platform logs into the output window, which is hugely helpful when you're trying to diagnose problems with your tests.
Great. Well, I just appreciate seeing all these varying options when it comes to testing, just trying to make it as accessible to folks as possible. Like, yeah, as someone like myself who doesn't do a lot of testing, but needs to get more into the habit of doing so, having those easy access methods across the board, just trying to make it as easy and painless as possible is great. Because I think at the end of the day, we all just sort of want to get back to code as quickly as possible. So when we have to debug or test, it's like, oh, here we go.
Exactly. The last thing I wanted to show, this is an enterprise level feature, but I think it's really, really cool and super helpful, is our live unit testing feature. And this allows for your tests to continually run in the background as you are coding. And so you can see what damage you're doing to your what regressions you are introducing while you're coding, which is hugely awesome. I live in live unit testing.
Yeah, that is a really nifty tool, especially if you have VS Enterprise. Like, definitely take advantage of that.
And so you did once that's set up, you can start coding away, and you can see already it's got added all these green check marks on all of my tests. And so these are all my succeeded tests, and everything's looking good. If I were to come in here and make a mistake, it's still doing the build, but you'll see red start to appear.
Awesome.
I don't know why the builds are taking so long today.
It's the demo gods.
Yes, I did not make the appropriate sacrifices today.
No, yeah. I don't think any of us know what the proper sacrifice is.
Yes.
Yeah, but it looks
awesome.
like
So here we go.
Yeah.
Yes, we finally got, so we can see all the red X's start to appear, and then as you type, it reevaluates and changes everything back to green there. And I think I still have my addition one messed up here, and I can fix that, and everything magically changes to all green, which. This, as you're working on adding new methods or fixing bugs in your code, when you're doing those fixes, you can see what impact those are having on your existing tests. And so one of the things, and then of course I can add. You can still see my code coverage and the files. So this is one of the features that I absolutely love because you get to see in real time the impact that you're having to the code as you're making it. When you're working, especially in enterprises where you're fixing a problem, you want to make sure that you're not introducing any other problems while you're doing that.
Yeah, and again, super just convenient. It can be easy, like everyone tells you test often, but it can be easy to forget that if it's like, late at night and you're just trying to hash out a function. So it's nice that it can just do it for you.
Run while you're coding. Yep, it's awesome. The key thing there is if you do add new methods and stuff, you want to make sure that you go back and update your code coverage report. There will then show that you have uncovered lines, which is really helpful. So
cool. Well, that is exciting to see all the different ways to be more productive in testing with the testing tools in Visual Studio. So if people want to expedite their own productivity with testing, where can they go to get started?
The Microsoft Docs site, we have all of these features are documented and under the Visual Studio docs. There's lots of great information about getting started. There's a whole getting started with unit testing learn page. There's a whole getting started with code coverage. Both of them are great places to get started.
Awesome. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on. I'm I'm so happy that like all your demos seem to work. And
just slow,
right? I know we were fretting about it earlier, but like it worked out. So I guess whatever sacrifice you did make to the demo gods, it was actually pretty substantial. Yeah. So looking forward to hearing more about testing as it continues to evolve in Visual Studio.
Yeah, we have lots of great things coming up over the next year. So keep watch out for the Visual Studio blogs and what's news as we continue adding amazing features and making things faster and better as we go.
Awesome. So until then, happy coding, y'all.